Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon, um, wherever you're looking at this from. My name is James Weeks. I'm originally from the Caribbean island of St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I'm the author of the book Meditations Across the Kings River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. And I help people with strategies for emotional wellness, financial wellness, and spiritual wellness. To learn more about me and the different services that I offer, visit acrossthekingsriver.com. Today, I have a very special guest joining us all the way from West Africa. She's a brilliant young woman who's a rising force in the business world and in I would say also the thought influence world. Her name is Maya King. um, Welcome, Maya. Thank you for taking time out to be with us today. And so the title of this talk following Spirit to Ghana. One of the things that fascinates me about your journey is when you were first telling me about your desires to go to Ghana, you were telling me about these spiritual experiences you had when you went to Ghana for the first time and you had this sense that this was your home or something like that. Could you talk about those experiences and what they were like?
Sure, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me, James. I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of your work. Your book, Across the Kings River, really changed my life. I would say that that's one of the first texts that I really committed to my daily life in the beginning of my spiritual journey. And honestly, one of the first steps I took that led me here. So I really want to thank you for walking in your purpose. And definitely thank you for the honor of having this conversation with you and sharing my story. I came to Ghana the first time as part of a girls' trip. It was my first time going on a girls' trip. It was in a moment of transition in my life. I was moving from New York back to Miami, and I would say spiritually and emotionally, spiritually, I was kind of becoming more introspective. I grew up in church. I grew up in a Christian family, Christian home, school, everything. My whole life was, you know, Bible based, and I never left from that. I went to Christian college, and then afterwards, I was always like a Bible study group leader or working with church. So it was always something that's very, very important to me. And I think 2016 or so, 2015, 2016, I went through a heartbreak that in a way made me look for God differently. I wasn't satisfied with Sunday service, bite-sized amounts, and I started to question everything that I had learned, especially because that's around the time that it became apparent to me that the 66 books of the Holy Bible were curated by a group of men at the Council of Nicaea. And as I started to study what they excluded, I started to see that God was a lot bigger than someone who just gets mad at me if I break one of the 10 commandments. So when I came to Ghana the first time, really, I was just happy to have a vacation. I hadn't had a vacation in a long time. But because I was preparing for that move, I didn't have time to mentally prepare for my trip. And I was also coming with friends that I trusted. So I was just down for the ride. And, I was leaving blustery, cold New York City. And you arrive here in Ghana and that heat smacks you in the face, the heat and humidity. December is like the beginning of the summertime here. And, when I stepped off, it was a smaller plane. And for some reason, we got off the plane on the tarmac and we kind of were shuttled into the airport. And I remember thinking, like, this reminds me of, one of my first visits to Jamaica as a kid. Like, this is how we also got off of the plane and into the airport. And when you get off of the plane and you look around, you see green trees, a little, plenty of foliage, like almost looking like a mountain in the distance, and that smell of burning, like landscaping, how sometimes you just have a little fire pit. And I really did think, like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of Jamaica. The heat, the sunshine, everything. Which started like, is this home, right? Um, I was just really happy to be on vacation, and I was pleasantly surprised. I had no clue what to expect as far as what Ghana looks like, or what it's like to be there on vacation. So I had a wonderful time. I met so many fun people, and it was also my birthday, which so that for me that's my New Year's. My birthday is my New Year's. I take it very importantly, like very seriously. I make my New Year's resolutions on my birthday, and I was just really introspective. And looking back, something happened almost every day to call my attention. But it took a specific experience a couple days into the trip where, by chance or coincidence or divine alignment, I met someone who had my name tattooed on his back, on the back of his leg. He calls the dog, he says, Maya, the dog's come running. It's his kid's name, it's his ex's name, and apparently it's his favorite word in the world. And so when I told him my name, he just gave me this big hug and he said, welcome home. And I think that is the moment where like the veil between time and space kind of thinned for me a little bit. And I distinctly heard God say to me, I'm God. Like, you're becoming cognizant of who I am and how powerful I am. And I have a plan for you. Things didn't go your way, but that's because it's going my way. And pay attention to the people that I bring into your life, because this is not coincidence. I'm bringing people in your life from this day forward on purpose. And that's really the moment truly that I fell in love with Ghana, because this is the place where I heard God for really the first time. I would say, looking back, I've seen his guidance or directions come through other people or dreams. This is the first time that it's like if I read a text message from God, like that way, it's there. It's can't get away from it. And that was really the beginning of a series of very divine events that happened and led me to believe that this is where God was calling me to be.
Wow. So Ed Herman is saying that the ancestors was calling you. So I would agree with that, because well, not only did you hear that, that voice or that direction that was spiritual, but you actually acted on it. You eventually moved back. So you said that there were some other experiences that you had that were also spiritual. Could you just talk about that? And then I would like you to talk about then how you went from having those spiritual experiences to actually moving. Because what happens to a lot of people is they might feel like they might get spiritual experiences, but then they don't act on it. They just have them, but they don't act on it. And what's so powerful about your story is, well, you acted on these things. You took that leap. So could you talk to that?
The Quran says, and also the Psalms, it says that God speaks in signs and wonders. The positions of the heavenly bodies, in the wind, everywhere he speaks. But to those who hear him not, he turns you over into a reprobate mind, which means you no longer can understand him. You no longer hear. You go around with blinders on and your fingers in your ear. So I want to say that everything from then until now has been spiritual. It has guided me to this point where I'm talking to you right now. That's a big thing that it took me a long time to see that, because in the beginning, when your frequency, when your radio station is not quite tuned into the correct frequency that you would say, where you can clearly hear his voice, it's easy to doubt, because to the best of my knowledge, God stopped talking to us when, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were walking around here, So from that trip, I came back and I moved to Miami. And I thought, you are crazy. You can't move to a third world country like that. And if you do, you're going to have to be filthy rich to maintain your lifestyle, sister. And so I kind of packed it away, and I was like, I will visit every year for my birthday, though. Like, that'll be exciting. I'll get to know people. I'll get to know Ghana, and then I'll move there when I retire or something, when I'm finally strike rich. but that wasn't God's plan for me.
Mhm.
There's people that I met when I moved to Miami, and again, hearing the reverberation of, pay attention to who I bring into your life, pay attention to who I bring into your life, pay attention to who I bring into your life. I met people in Miami that helped me to tap into, my, like, figuring out my spiritual antenna. Like, how can I hear God clearly? And, there's more experiences where I heard him in ways that are undeniable because different messengers along the way only repeated the same message that I had heard myself first, right? They confirmed it with me. Everyone I met in Miami helped me to let go of like doubt. Like, yes, God really can speak to you in any way he feels like it. It could be a song, it could be a radio advertisement, it could be a tarot card, it could be written in the sand. It doesn't matter. It could be a scripture in the Bible. God is so limitless. He's so powerful that he can talk to you any way he feels like it. So still, like, trying to understand, spirituality a little bit better versus, the dogma of Christianity. I tried to understand, like, what it's like to have a relationship truly with God, that, he walks with me, he talks to me, and he tells me things that I don't know. Fast forward 2 years, and the friend that invited me to Ghana in the first place was getting married. She invited me back to Ghana. She invited me to be in her wedding, and I returned. And it just so happens that my return to Ghana happened in 2019, which was when the president of Ghana had launched a campaign to encourage diasporans to consider Ghana for, their holidays and travel, tourism. And it was called the Year of the Return campaign. It just so happens that 2019 was 400 years from the advent of the transatlantic slave industry. And it was time to come home. So now this is in my mind, I come here in Ghana. It was a very, very busy time, obviously being in the weddings and participating in the weddings. And that trip went by in a blink of an eye. On my way back to Miami, I got to my connecting flight in Portugal, and I had a panic attack waiting to board my flight to Miami. I've never had a panic attack before. And I wasn't stressed. I was very relaxed. I had just enjoyed a vacation. Oh, this is what I was going to say. Before the trip, I experienced racism in the workplace for the first time in my life. And I've grown up in what we call the sticks of Central Florida, where Confederate flags are everywhere you turn. But, in my mid 30s, for the first time, I experienced it, directly targeted to me. And I struggled with the fact that no one did anything. Like, people were just like, okay. Like, if I had said my package got lost in the mail, people were like, okay. Friends, the police, HR, coworkers, no one did anything. And this went on for months. I was being harassed and targeted for months. So when I came to Ghana, I was just so happy to get out of that atmosphere for a little bit. Happy to see friends that I hadn't seen in a while, and happy to enjoy Ghana again. So, of course, the trip went by quickly. And then, I get to this moment where I'm boarding the plane back to Miami, and I have a panic attack. And I had this extremely intense impression that I needed to go right back to Ghana. And I was like, that's going to be really expensive. And I just left. Like, you couldn't have said this when I was in a crowd, before I even got on this plane. And I called my friend and I said, hey, I want to come back for a couple more days. Can I stay with you? And she's like, yeah, sure, come back. Got on the next flight back to Ghana and rested that first day when I returned. And then I think the next day we went to the beach, and I stood on the shore again. By the way, this is the second time being on the shore and having this God moment. And I was standing akimbo in front of the water, and I was like, okay, can we talk about what just happened in the airport 2 days ago? Like, what was that? Like, did I just spend buku money to come back here? Take extra personal days. My beginning of the year in property management in Miami is very, very busy. There's a lot to do to prepare for the rest of the year. New budgets that have come out, new incentives, new action items, and I have plenty of things to do. And I felt the wind from the water circle me, almost like if two arms went around my torso. And I heard, this is where you need to be. As soon as possible. This is where you need to be. And again, I went through that, going back to Miami, wondering if I was losing my marbles. But this time, I would say that the transition to Ghana went to hyperdrive, I would say. I ended up, experiencing, what I call, further harassment and bullying from a coworker. When I went to complain about it, I was told that I was no longer a fit for the client, and I was terminated immediately without any recourse. And I was struggling with like that feeling of hopelessness, like, wow, like this happened to me. I'm a model employee. I have saved this contract and gotten it renewed twice since I've been here. And, any opportunity in Miami is like my entire career was really curated through my experience working in Miami. And like, this is happening to me because of my skin and because I complained about it. Like, I speak Spanish. No one knows. People think I'm from Latin America, when they hear me speaking Spanish. And like, this is just going to go down like this. And then I had this feeling of like, I'm not going to take this. I'm not going to take it this way. I called a lawyer. I called people I knew. They put me in touch with a lawyer. And while I'm talking to him on the phone to try to explain to him, I had already talked to one or two lawyers. Only one of those like super spammy offices that like, if you call and leave a message, they email you and call you and text you 1,000 times. Only one other office had responded to me, but this is the first person I've been able to speak to, and I actually speak to the lawyer.
I see.
He was taking notes of what I was explaining had happened, and he felt like I had a case. And I'm watching on the news George Floyd's life being snuffed out by a police officer. He was on his neck, and I'm just like, so that rocked me, obviously, watching that. And then I watched around the world how people stood up and said, enough, which empowered me to stand on my 2 feet and say, I'm not taking this shit from anybody, excuse my French. And I think I had a conversation with a friend who is very spiritual, and she told me, pack up your stuff, take a road trip, you and your dog, figure it out. You want to move to Ghana? I'm sure it's going to work out. And I had no clue how it was going to work out. I think the whole time until I had even gotten to the airport in October with my one-way ticket in my hand to Accra. I still didn't know how this was going to work out. But he really brought me all the way. And I'll say that once I got here and started, going through the challenges of transitioning to a completely new lifestyle, complete new paradigm, when I would say, okay, that's it, I'm ready, he would stop me. He would bring someone into my life to give me the encouragement that I needed to keep going just a little bit further. He would send a job, he would send an opportunity. And I have now been here for 2 years. I just passed my 2-year anniversary.
Wow. We have a comment from Ed who's saying that the ancestors wanted you, and he's saying that your story is connecting with him. So I want to ask you this question, and then we'll go back into your story. So because, again, all of these spiritual experiences you had, what would be your advice to others who are having some type of spiritual experience, or they feel maybe they're receiving some messages, but they're not acting on it? What would be your advice to them? And then tell us about how you transition from, okay, moving to Ghana and then now today you have this real estate business that's thriving. So could you talk first about, okay, what's your advice to people who are on the fence, who maybe they want to go somewhere else, or maybe whatever, maybe they want to end a relationship that's not working for them, whatever message that they're receiving, what would be your advice to them?
The scripture says, he that has ears to hear, let him hear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your book teaches us the value of developing a daily spiritual practice. Just like if you were dating someone, you have to daily make an investment into your relationship with that person. You have to do the same thing with spirit. You have to make an effort on a daily basis, a significant effort. The days that you don't do it is the day that your relationships suffer. The same as in any friendship, any professional relationship, in any romantic relationship, right? I couldn't understand in the beginning. Now I can hear God's voice and he'll tell me, like he just did last week, go and stand at this specific spot. And I'll think, this is wild, but I go and stand there. And when I get there, divine orchestration, I meet someone who puts me on to so many different things. That just happened to me last week. But, back in 2017, I couldn't really understand when he was talking. I was like, this is a bit weird. And I was a bit resistant. And I will tell you that a key is resistance is like the first step that you probably should do it. If you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm scared, you probably should pursue it. Get acquainted with or knowledgeable on whatever that is. Ask. Gideon put out fleece. Deborah didn't believe when God told her, to lead Israel. But God will answer your question. He's faithful and just to give us a way out. And he always answers. He always answers our prayers. So my advice to someone who's like trying to develop their spiritual ears is talk to God. Talk. But learn to listen. Just like if you're in a boardroom, you can't talk the whole time. You have to be able to actively listen. And I would say the same thing would go for...
I love that. Actively listen. I like that analogy of being in a boardroom, can't talk all the time. So I want to ask you this, because like most people in the diaspora, you grew up with a Christian background. So when did you first start becoming aware of African spiritual traditions, and how is that influencing or shaping your life?
So immediately post my first trip to Ghana. So it started before, right? I told you I got to the point where I started to be like, something's missing here. Like, there's some information missing here. And I think YouTube sent me down an information trail about Comedicism. And I was like, wait, the story of Horus and this is the same exact story of Jesus Christ's birth. The creation stories match. I think I watched the Zeitgeist Theory. It's a documentary. And it basically says that Christianity, Buddhism, they're all the same, just different characters. It's the exact same story. And so I became open. And I started reading more. I read the Apocrypha, some of the books. And I started to realize that God is so big that you can't put him in just one religion. God is bigger than that. He's bigger than all of them combined, all of the religions combined. He's bigger than anything that exists. And our mortal brains will never contain or really even comprehend. The most we can do is hear him and see his glory, right? To understand him a little bit better. Yeah, I kind of went off on a rabbit trail, so I kind of lost where I was going with that. But, I think for me, once I started to realize that God was in all things, and I think I went through becoming woke as part of moving to New York City. I became more aware of the real world. Growing up in a small town, church is the most important thing. Once you move to the city, you realize that church is a very small aspect of life, right? For some people. So I just had hunger to understand my roots. Where do I come from? Why am I the way I am? Why are things working in the world the way that it does? And I just, in that pursuit of knowledge, started to see that, there's so much more to this. I ended up being put onto an author by the name of Sobonfu Some and her husband Malidoma Some. And Sobonfu has a beautiful book where it teaches you like community is what you need. Community is a very important part of your success as an African descendant. You have to have community. The first step of building community, she said in this book, I think it's of Water and Spirit. No, it's not that one. It's the other one. I'll look it up. But she talks about like the first thing you can do if you want to connect to African spirituality is set up your ancestral altar. And I was like, ancestral altar?
Mhm.
And as she kind of describes what an ancestral altar is, I looked up and see I already had one. I already had a place where my family's pictures were. That's a very special place in my house. That's also sometimes where I'll put a candle or an incense. And that's a place where nobody touches me. The nicest things in my house are there. So instead of just walking by it and dusting it, I said hello to the people photographed there. And everything I would read from, about African spirituality matched in some ways, echoed through what I had learned, growing up Christian. So, there was nothing really new, right? It's just everything started to align and make a little bit more sense for me. So it really started with her books. And then because of those authors, that is how I found your book as well,
Okay.
which was just chock full of what I needed to hear. I think we're taught to as Christians is that God is tired of us in a way. He's tired of our crap, and we're definitely going to get it. But when you study spirituality, you study the softer side and you realize that he loves you regardless. The same way a kid doesn't walk into the kitchen and say, Mommy, I know I've been horrible all day long, but please may I have some food, just a bite of something, I'm hungry. You don't go to your parents and you in the kitchen and ask them for that. You open the fridge and you take what you want and you eat it. And if you can't open the fridge, then you ask your mother for food and you don't have to create a case for yourself. You get the food. And that made more sense to me, that God is that
Beautiful.
loving being that's connected to us.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I want to ask you this question. So you're getting these signs, you moved to Africa, and today, of course, I know you have this real estate business. So how did you go to, so part of the reason why your journey is so important is people many times maybe they want to do something, but they don't know if they'll ever land on their feet financially. They don't know how things might work out. But when you moved to Africa, going into real estate, I assume probably wasn't in your mind. So
Mhm.
did you transition into that career that you're doing now? And what would be your advice to others who are maybe thinking about launching a new career?
Again, the scripture says that God knew us when we were in the womb.
Say that one more time.
God knew us when we were in the womb.
Okay.
Jeremiah 29:11, my first tattoo, it says, For I, God, knows the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. The next verse talks about to get to that, though, you have to have that loving relationship with him. I would say the same way that Noah had no idea who was actually going to rain, but he was obedient. The same way that was when Isaac was heading to be sacrificed. His father had no clue what was going to happen, but he was obedient. When I came here to Accra, I wanted to have nothing to do with property management and real estate after what I went through those last few months. I was really getting sick and tired of dealing with entitled people who had so much money that they could drive you crazy because they were just so bored. The one thing about having a lot of money is you have so much time. I would be in my office and people would come down and talk to me without stopping for a breath. I would time them. How long have they talked before they stop, take a breath, before they ever stop? And they'll talk about everything, and every tiny little thing having to do with property management to them was like the destruction of anything. Like the world is coming to an end. So I was tired of being in real estate, quite frankly. And I had a conversation with a developer here who was recognized in the industry, and he told me actually Lagos, Nigeria would match the experience that I had received working and living in New York and in Miami. So I really didn't think about real estate when I came here. When I came here, my original plan was to look at export import options. Um, I really was preparing to live in a hut somewhere. I don't even think I was thinking that living here would lead me to a lifestyle of abundance. But that's the thing. He doesn't call the equipped, he equips you to the call. And when I got here and people ask what you do, and I say what I did, job offers came in. And I think that there's plenty of opportunities where in the beginning people saw my value, but I couldn't see my value. And it took me growing closer to God and realizing that I'm his emanation, I'm his offspring, and therefore, yes, I am Maya King. He didn't give me the last name King for no reason, you know. He didn't give me my Jamaican ancestry to just be sitting back and taking any type of treatment and behavior. And I realized that I'm the best around here. And it took a series of events for me to see that. And once I started to believe that, there's more work and more opportunities and more leads, and I really have enough time to channel on my own. And I'm excited that that means that there's other people that I can bring along on my journey. You know, I have 2 or 3 girlfriends back in States that I've told that if they're ready to come for a few months, there's things that I have for them to do, you know. But, you know, I was asked a question once. If you were to receive $250,000 today, what would you do? And I said, I would move to Africa and become a bridge for those in the diaspora to find a home in Ghana. And I had no idea at that time that that is exactly what I have ended up doing. All of my clients live in the United States or coming from here. Either they come here for work, or they've moved here, or they go back and forth. And if not them, UK. All of my clients are from States. I would say I ended up in real estate because that is exactly what God wanted me to do.
All right. So question. So now how could people get in touch with you to, if they want to like buy land or whatever, how can people get in touch with you? And could you tell us all the services you provide and how people could get in touch with you?
Sure. So I do quite a bit. That's also the fun part of having your own business and being in real estate. I consult, I manage, I decorate, I furnish, I sell, I lease, I manage short-term rentals. In real estate so far, I do events. I hope to have one in December for people who have an interest in meeting, you know, land acquisition lawyers or developers or, you know, real estate companies. I'd like to connect them. And then I kind of do a little bit of everything in real estate. Sometimes I even model. I'm operating in the art space. I'm tapping into my creativity. I enjoy every day. Every day I get up and do something that I'd like to do, you know. But for folks in the States or outside of Ghana, if you want to get in touch with me and use my services, I have WhatsApp. I think after this we can find a way to have it live somewhere for someone, but I have WhatsApp. Email, my website is being built, I have social media, and just reach out and I will definitely return the communication.
Okay. So what's the best email address for people to contact you at?
Sure. My company is called the Magnate Group, which Magnate means a royal. So, you know, I had to do that. My email address is simple. It's info@themagnategroup.com.
Beautiful. Okay, so someone is asking a question, and I'll have you answer it, and I will. You see, so the question is, how are you able to get clarity of the messages leading you to your journey back to Ghana? So let's take that. So I will just give my take on that, and then I'll have you say whatever you want to say, Tara. So Carrie, well, so the thing is, what I always say as I work with people is not to like overthink the messages you're getting. It's just move with the inspiration that comes to you, and it doesn't really have to be much more complicated than that. So you have to move with what you receive, and it's step by step. So it's not that once you get a message, you're going to know like every single thing that might happen after you get the message, or you have to know like from A to Z, then I'll do this, then I'll do this, then I'll do this. It's just taking one step at a time. And then when you take that step, something else might come to you. And then when you look back, you'll realize, oh, this was part of the plan. This was part of a higher thing, a higher purpose. Now it all makes sense. But initially, it may not all make sense to you. And that's where the faith comes in and it's just stepping out. So, what would you say? How would you answer this question, Maya? How are you able to get clarity out of the messages leading you to your journey?
So I had to live it. I had to live in faith that what I was hearing or what was being impressed in my spirit was correct. And the cool thing is, you're allowed to ask God, can I phone a friend? Can I use my landline? He'll let you. He'll absolutely do. Sometimes you don't have to ask him. He'll send a friend to call you and say, Maya, I had a dream that you were in Ghana again. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess I have to, okay, and James, this well. I was super doubtful the whole way because it seemed too good to be true. You want me to leave this rat race and toxic media environment, especially at that time. And you want me to just go and live in Ghana, which is fabulous. There's fresh mango everywhere. There's good food. People like to dance and jam and be happy. And, there's a land of entrepreneurs. Everyone is an entrepreneur, There's fewer employees than there are entrepreneurs. I doubted so much. But here's the thing. When God has a plan for you and it's time sensitive, it's like a river current. It will pull you. And it's not weak. It's strong enough to pull you and keep going. And the only way for you to kind of get through that current is to not fight the current, but learn to move with the current, right? Specifically me, I asked for help. I would ask someone that I trusted whose spiritual life reflected my values. I would ask, your ears are better than mine. What should I do? And no one said, you need to walk over here and 3 steps here and hop backwards and dig under this tree. No one said that. They asked me questions. And when they asked me the questions, I would realize that, okay, I know the answer. I know the answer. And I just had to take every day and live in faith. 2 years ago, exactly this time, I didn't think I would be here for very long at all. As a matter of fact, this time 2 years ago, I was looking at tickets to come back to the United States. I thought I had lost my mind. I had gone through a bad experience that made me feel like I wasn't going to make it here. But I was interrupted by a phone call by a friend who told me, come with me, I'm picking you up, I'm taking you to lunch. And he ended up introducing me to the people who have been my emotional, cheerleaders from that day until today. And they've kept me going, I would say that for sure prayer, for sure that you want to create your own. You don't want to always be looking for him through other people or other things. You want to be able to hear him directly, him, her. So prayer, I would say, is the first thing. Being here in Ghana, all the chapters of the Psalms that I was forced to memorize as a kid, I go back to them daily. I find a lot of clarity reading the Bible. I find a lot of clarity reading the Quran. I'm not allowed to read the Torah yet because I'm not 40, but I can definitely study some of it, Kabbalah, all of it. All of it is like a confirmation. You'll read something and be like, okay. I would say, though, the specific way to get clarity was developing a daily spiritual practice that by now I cannot operate normally without that daily spiritual practice. Waking up, praying at dawn, and reading my Bible thereafter.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question. So could you repeat again your email address for people who want to get in contact with you?
Sure, sure. I can even try and put it on the screen if you bear with me for a second. I'm going to see how well technology serves me. So,
I don't know if it'll show up on the screen, but so it's not showing up clearly enough. I'll just type it. So I'll just type it here. So it's info at the Magnet Group.
yep,
Magnetgroup.com.
.com.
So info@magnatgroup.com. All right. So
The Magnate Group.
okay. So info. One moment. So let me correct that. So it's info at the
Magnate
Group.com. All right. So I want to close with because we have just a few more minutes. I want to close with this. What would be your advice to people who feel like stuck right now in life, or who are feeling like discouraged, or who feels like this life isn't working out for them? I was talking to a client just yesterday, about 2 days ago, and she was telling me like she feels God played her. Like she's getting played by God. That's what she told me. What would be your advice to people who feel stuck, or who feel fearful, or depressed about the future? What words of encouragement would you say? What would be your bit of wisdom to them?
I felt like God had played me too before I came to Ghana. And that first time he said the same thing. It's not me who played you. It's not me. I'm God. Someone played you, but it wasn't me. That was the first thing. That feeling of like something here. This can't be all that there is. Honestly, if you ask me, in my opinion, that's God's like dog whistle for you. You're not listening to me. I've been telling you you're supposed to do something else. So I'm going to dog whistle you until you hear this frequency and you kind of go crazy until you can find out the source of the sound. Psalms 37:23 says, the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord, and that man delights in his way. Number one sign that you're not doing what God has intended you to do is your discontentment with your daily life. Mm-hmm. I went to the Grand Canyon on my way here to Ghana, and I couldn't understand at the time why God wanted me to drive by myself and with my dog across the United States. And I decided I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon because I've never been. And I don't know when I'm coming back. Maybe I'll live in Africa forever. And when I got there, I got there just in time for sunset over the most beautiful scene. And I remembered that I think it became apparent to me, like, do you know that like this plant right here is worshiping God? You know how? Because it's giving off oxygen, it's taking in carbon dioxide. The roots are doing the roots thing. This plant is living in testament to the absolute glory of God. Are you living in testament to the glory of God? Probably not if you're not happy. Mm-mm. Probably not. But don't sit here, I would say, like that, that's a big statement to make. I would say, like, don't sit here and think, oh, I'm not living what God wants me to live. Ask him, what do you want me to do? He'll tell you. And it won't be in a way that you can be like, was that God? You'll know. Because every human directly derives from God. So he knows how to talk to you. Does he have to talk to you through your mother? Is it a tarot reading? However he has to do, he knows how to talk to you because he created you. And when he created you, when he decided that you should exist, when conception happened and life began, he had a plan for your life. And maybe it's not for you to become like President Obama. Maybe it's to be a janitor somewhere, but for a specific reason, for such a time as this. Esther didn't think that she could be queen. She was an orphan. She was a Jew. She saved her entire people from certain disaster. So I would say, if you're feeling like that, try God and see. Try it and see. I did. And I'm living my best life. I really am living my best life. It's not easy. It has not been, a movie. I mean, it hasn't been a rom-com, let's put it that way. But it's definitely been a movie. Like I said, I just left a fashion show hanging out with the head curator whose mom dropped me off. Tomorrow I'm going to brunch at Polo Grounds. This morning I woke up at 4:00 in the morning. I had my prayers. I went to go and show a property to someone. I'm learning to drive a motorcycle, and I got back in time to have all this stuff. I'm going to bed happy. I'm going to bed with a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. And if someone asks me to talk about it, I'll talk about it, because that's what he has asked me to do. He divinely orchestrates our life, divinely. It's better than artificial intelligence. It's better than any computer. It's better than any Excel program, any data analysis tool. He divinely orchestrates our life so that we live our highest purpose, our highest good, and for the benefit of everyone else around us. I would say depression or sadness is the first sign that there's more for you to be doing. There's something else for you to be doing, and pursue it. The first thing I would say is, what is your passion? What are you passionate about? What is something you can get up and do for free? Just do it. I started painting. When I came here, I was actually making clothes. I would sit in the roadside seamstress shop all day long. I would go and buy fabric and just sit there because that's what I wanted to do. It took 3 months before I realized that real estate was an option for me. 3 months of living here before I saw that. Before I just did what I could do, what made me happy today. Because our hearts, when they're happy, they're giving off worship. So if your heart's not happy, how are you worshiping? Just like if you're in a relationship, if your heart's not happy, how are you making your significant other feel loved? If you're not happy in that relationship, how does that work? I don't know. I'm single, I don't know. So, but I would say, like, if you're kind of feeling like, there's something more, I'm sure there is. And, get if you don't have the spiritual ears, get with someone who does.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you that was so much wisdom. I like what you said. It's not an algorithm. The divine is not an algorithm. It's not a spreadsheet. I forget what else you said. But that's
analysis.
Right. And then what you said about do what makes you happy. That is so powerful because it's something that people often overlook. And for example, when people are often thinking about how can I make money, which is something that, most people think about, okay, how can I make money? That's one thing that they disconnect. Many people are not in touch with their own happiness. So whatever they do, they don't continue to do it because they're not happy. So for me, love is always the first step for so many things. Do you love what you do? Is there joy in it? Are you happy? Because those things can keep us going, through the difficult times. Your thoughts?
Exactly. Do something that makes you happy. Do something that serves someone else. Do something that makes somebody else happy. And it should shift. It should shift.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ma. You've been an outstanding guest, and thank you so much. Congratulations on all the success. And so again, you all can reach her at info@thepowermagnet.com. And if you lose her email, just contact me and I'll get you in contact with her. But
yes.
Thank you for joining in. Thank you for all your questions. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Be blessed.
Be blessed.